This past weekend, Bungie gave us Trials Zone Control on the map Convergence. If you're familiar with me at all at this point, you probably know that I hate that map and find it to be very poorly balanced for Destiny 2 combat, but that's besides the point. Because of the tiny choke points and the nature of zone control, I found myself really struggling initially to win against teams that ran high mobility subclasses and exotics to get out into mid-map first, and then lock down those tiny choke points with close quarters weapons. I'd basically get locked out of important spots on the map and then get blasted the second I tried to do anything about it. And this made me sit down and examine the problem and brainstorm some potential solutions. The answer that I came to was a build that specifically was designed to combat teams that ran high mobility and close quarters special weapons. If I was blocked off from an area that I needed to control, then I needed a build that was about breaking a siege. I needed a metaphorical battering ram and siege ladders to get me over the metaphorical walls and through the metaphorical gates so I could wreak havoc inside the metaphorical keep. You get the idea. My solution was this build for my Warlock. Besides being a really freaking good build, it also makes my Warlock look really, really good, and that always wins points in my book. But let's start breaking this thing down. If you're a regular viewer, welcome back, and thanks so much for supporting my content. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. I'm True Vanguard, and I love Destiny PvP. I love making builds and reviewing weapons and teaching players how to up their game in the Crucible. And with that, let's get to my Cold Spear build. First things first, this build leverages the Nezarec Whisper Glaive. Glaives are, they're interesting weapons for sure. They have a learning curve beyond just point and shoot. They take some practice to dial in the projectile speed and damage and understanding the timing on activating your shield on the glaive based on the amount of energy that you've generated for it. So if you need a refresher, I know that there's tons of videos out there. For example, I know Destiny Fun Police made a video teaching you the ways of the glaive if you want to brush up on the basics of the weapon type. The role that I'm using is Unstoppable Force for extra damage output after using the shield to block incoming damage, and Impulse Amplifier to dramatically increase the projectile speed for the glaive, which is a non-negotiable for me personally. I like the idea of using the glaive for this build since the whole idea is to be like a spear point that you can break into an area of interest with. Thematically, it works, but also it works practically. You're going to see me win a whole lot of 1v2s in this video, even when I'm weak, simply because I got that first kill and that with the glaive, and then I popped the shield on my glaive while blasting the second guy away while he, uselessly shoots the glaive shield. But that's kill number 2. The most important part is finding a creative way to secure kill number 1 on an enemy that's locking down a point of interest, ready to blow you away the second that you peek. I'll get to that in a second, but first, let me just point out that I'm using 2 different weapons in the kinetic slot. Sometimes I'm using the Ostringer if I need to manage some mid-range duels, but for the most part I'm actually using the Empirical Evidence sidearm since I'm forcing myself to engage in close quarters for this build. Alright, so as far as pushing in and securing the first kill goes, I needed something that could go in before me and take the attention, the aggro, off of me. The obvious choice here was the Cold Snap Grenade with the Osmiomancy exotic gloves for the Warlock. These Cold Snaps, they track aggressively. I get 2 charges for double the usage, and I'm using the Ice Flare bolts to chain freezing to additional targets. I'm also using the Frost Pulse aspect because I found that it was really useful for freezing aggressive players as I bait them into a push. The fragments that I have equipped are basically all about getting my grenades up and then adding benefits when I kill a frozen enemy. They include the Whispers of Shards, Torment, Fissures, and Chains. Feel free to pause the video at any time and take in the full build and try to replicate it and then modify it at your discretion. I'm running max recovery and max discipline for obvious reasons. I want to freeze people as much as possible and keep my health up. So let's talk about the cadence here. How are we going to approach these situations? So what you'll see me doing in the gameplay is approaching the area of interest on the map that I want control of. I'm intentionally avoiding the sniper lanes on my approach. That's really, really important. Hug the appropriate walls on your approach to keep yourself out of the line of sight of players who got to the lane before you and are waiting for you to cross the lane. Don't tempt fate. With all the targeting mods out there and opening shot and all that stuff, these snipers are getting headshots on you that they don't deserve right now. So just avoid those lanes altogether until you have a pick to work with. Once I get to the area of interest, I'll go ahead and lead with that cold snap grenade. On convergence, that meant I'm using it up on waterfall to have it go around that upper curve there, or I'm using it at the base of the cube in mid-map to go around the cube and tag someone, or I'm tossing it up onto the bridge between mid and waterfall to freeze someone crouching with a shotgun or a fusion rifle. And this is kind of an exercise in trust too. If you wait to see if the cold snap freezes somebody before you push in, then you most likely are going to miss your window. You have to trust that that grenade is going to do one of two things. It is either going to freeze an enemy, or just as importantly, it's going to force them to turn their back to you and run to avoid the grenade. So this lets you, at the very least, push into the space and gain control of it as they run away. Otherwise, you can follow the grenade in and shoot the fleeing enemy in the back. Best case scenario though, the grenade will land too close for the enemy to do anything about it, and it will freeze them, allowing you to move in and eliminate them with the glaive. The tracking on these things is really good. Even a really good player can fall victim to a very well placed grenade. That's just the way that it goes. You want to use the glaive because that's going to charge it up so that you can use the shield on the next opponent and basically get a free kill while they helplessly shoot the glaive barrier. A lot of times the cold snap will freeze the first target, and while you're messing them up, the ice flare bolts are going to go and freeze a second target. Sometimes the enemies are right on top of each other, so shattering the first enemy will kill the second guy too. If I'm out of glaive ammo, I can always just use the sidearm for rapid sustained damage on frozen enemies too. This is really the cadence. This is the rhythm of using this build. You treat it like a siege-breaking build. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it's your siege ladder to climb the wall or the battering ram to break into the front gate. You want to use this build as a means of taking control away from an enemy. And speaking of control, this works in sixes quite well too. It's a great way to reclaim a zone that an enemy occupies or is currently capturing. They're sitting ducks on those zones for things like cold snap grenades. You toss it in, and then run in behind that grenade and capitalize on the chaos that it creates. And people might argue that the glaive is just a meme and that a shotgun would shatter the frozen enemies better, and perhaps part of that is true. But the reason I seriously want the glaive instead is because of the kill chaining potential here. With the glaive, I can actually kill the first guy and get that shield charged up so that I can get follow-up kills in a way that I can't do with a shotgun that would just leave me really exposed instead. Don't sleep on glaives. They have a learning curve, like I said, but someone who knows what they can do and knows how to play them correctly can be a real menace in PvP. And so there you have it. That is my cold spear build. I encourage you, try it out. Take it for a spin. Modify it if you want to, so it suits you personally better. I fully endorse this build, and I was genuinely surprised at how good it is in Trials specifically. But I'll let those Trials clips speak for themselves. Thanks so much for watching the video today. Please consider leaving a like on the video only if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for additional Destiny 2 content. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible.